Good morning and a very warm welcome to this presentation with Promore Pharma in connection with the company's report for the third quarter of 2021. The company is today represented by CEO Jonas Ekblom and CFO Erik Magnusson. As for myself, my name is Alf Riple. I work at Västra Hamnen Corporate Finance and I will be your moderator for today. We will start with a short presentation about the company and after that we will have a Q&A session. If you like to ask questions, you can find a control that's named questions. It's either on the right side of the screen or the bottom of the screen, depending on your unit. You can enlarge that and write your question. I will read it out and the company will answer. So all that remains for me to say is that this session is being recorded and that the recorder later on can be found on Promore Pharma's homepage and on Västra Hamnen's channel on YouTube. So with that, over to you, Jonas.
Thank you very much, Alf. Thanks for that invitation. So I will start by giving a short operational review of where we're standing, and then my colleague Erik will give you an opportunity to see how the financial position is per third quarter of 2021, and then after that we'll have the Q&A session. So Promore Pharma, in brief, we're a small biopharmaceutical company. We are working on two development initiatives. These are two human-based peptides and Sareptide that we are developing for prevention of skin scarring, dermal scarring. This is an opportunity that we think represents about 30 million annual relevant procedures. And we have the project Ropocamptide, which is a new treatment for venous leg ulcers, the most common type of chronic leg wounds, and here we estimate that there are at least 1 million patients in North America, EU, and Japan that have a large wound, which is the addressable target for us. And in both these cases, there are today no prescription pharmaceuticals. I want to say a few words about our respective strategies in these two areas. So in regards to scar prevention and the project and Sareptide, where we have conducted two clinical trials in the past, we made a slight strategic change in earlier this year, so in the first quarter. We're focusing this program on a phase 2 clinical trial that we are preparing to test the feasibility of utilizing Sareptide for prevention of scars on the skin, whether that is in conjunction with surgery or dermal trauma. This is a little bit of a fishing campaign, this clinical study, in the sense that we aim to define which endpoints are suitable for coming future clinical studies and also to be able to calculate the dimension of another phase 2 trial that will come after this one. In parallel with this development work, we're also seeking partnerships for the opportunity of using Sareptide in other medical applications. For instance, the prevention of scars in conjunction with tendon repair surgery. The other program, Ropocamptide, which is addressing chronic wounds, we completed a phase 2b clinical study, the LL37 HEAL study, by the end of last year. We are currently conducting some product development in this project in anticipation of a phase 3 clinical study. In prior clinical studies that we've done, we used a two-component product, a product that needs to be mixed prior to application on the wound at each treatment occasion. And in phase 3 and in the commercial setting, we have all along known that we need a single component product, so a product that is contained in a single container that does not require pre-mixing, so a product that is more user-friendly. So we're progressing with that development right now. And ultimately, also in this program, of course, we're seeking the opportunity to have partnerships, whether those are regional or multinational, for the late stage development for confirmatory clinical trials and market authorization. I want to say a few words about these two marketplaces. So if we look at the scarring market, this is a global market for products and technology for scar prevention and treatment. It's estimated this year to exceed $25 billion in annual turnover. This marketplace is growing very rapidly. It's growing double digit, and anticipated to do so over the next 5 to 10 years. And what's compelling for us is that we are addressing the most common types of scars, so hypertrophic scars, keloids, and contractures. And we think these represent about 25 to 30 million annual procedures that are relevant, and this would correspond to an addressable market of about $10 billion US. In the case of chronic wounds, that is an almost equally large marketplace for products for treatment of wounds. And here we are addressing primarily venous leg ulcers, which is the largest category, single largest category of chronic wounds. And we estimate that in North America, EU, and Japan, there are at least 1 million patients that have large wounds, wounds that are larger than 10 square centimeters. And that in turn would represent also a very sizable addressable market. There, something happened with my
maybe have you made sure that PowerPoint is your active program?
Yes, did it freeze on the other side?
Yeah, we are looking at Promore Pharma's key markets.
Okay. Something happened when I tried to move the icon from the text here. I don't know if I should move out from sharing and try to move back in.
Yeah, I think that probably is the only solution.
Okay, let's see here.
Yeah, there we go.
I understand that you see it, but the problem is, oh, there we go. It froze on my screen. That was the problem. Now I got the activation back. So now we should be able to move to the next slide. I deeply apologize for that. In the third quarter, we've had a number of achievements or accomplishments that I would like to mention. So we have done a lot of preparations for PHSU05, which is the phase 2 clinical study that we want to conduct in dermal scarring. A lot of these efforts have been focusing on the manufacturing and production of the investigational medical product. And we have retired a lot of manufacturing risk steps in this process. In regards to ropocamptide, we have had our results published in a scientific journal. So these results were published in October in Wound Repair and Regeneration, which is the official journal of the International Wound Healing Society. And we've received a second opinion from a couple of key opinion leaders, most notably Dr. Jean-Charles Caruel, who is a French key opinion leader in the wound care field. And this data set that we collect from second parties, we utilize in our partnering discussions with companies that may have an interest in having strategic alliances or collaborations with us on this project. And then after the report period in November, we received the permissions to start PHSU05, the skin scarring study. So we received the permission from the clinical trial application from the Swedish Medical Products Agency, Läkemedelsverket, and also from the ethical committee. So we are all poised to be able to start this initiative in the beginning of next year. I want to say a few words about what will be the main activity and main event in 2022. So it's this phase 2 study. The principle of this is we're applying ensereptide, which is a compound that has the ability to prevent essentially any type of fibroblastic scarring, whether that happens in the body or in the skin. It's based on two fundamental mechanisms of action. This compound is anti-inflammatory and it's also pro-fibrinolytic. And in our case, we have both of those attractive mechanisms of action in one single molecule. The clinical study that we're headed at has a number of objectives. We want to assess the safety and the tolerability of the compound, of course, in this setting, but also have the objective of being able to verify indicative efficacy. This is a single study center study, will be conducted in Uppsala. The objective is to bring in 20 to 24 study subjects. We aim to have at least 20 subjects that complete the entire protocol. The patients will receive synthetic full thickness lesions. Each patient will receive 6 lesions, and these will be randomized. So 3 of these scars will be treated with active compound and 3 of these scars will be treated with placebo. And the nice thing about this, it allows us to reduce the variability because each patient can serve as its own control, so to speak, since we know that there are inter-individual variability in the propensity to develop hypertrophic scarring. We're aiming to start this enrollment in the first quarter of 2022. We also, if we keep that schedule, we'll be able to have the last subject last visit in the third quarter of 22. And then we have some histological analysis that we will do on the biopsies that are taken, and we have as a target goal to have the results available around the turn of the year 2022-2023. So with that, I would like to move over to corporate and the finances, and I leave the word to my colleague Erik Magnusson. Erik, please.
Thank you, Jonas. Just a quick rundown on the numbers for the quarter. As you can see, the costs in the third quarter were actually both lower in the previous quarters and also significantly lower than in third quarter last year. As you might remember, we had more costs related to the HEAL study in ropocamptide in the third quarter last year, while we still haven't started to ramp up the costs for the PHSU05 in the third quarter. It will come successfully first in the fourth quarter and then also in the first and second quarter next year. So we will see the costs rising again. And there are also other external costs were also down, not only the costs related to the studies, but they will also start to increase a bit going forward. Next slide, please. Here you can see that the outgoing cash balance after the new issue of 44.7 million that we received in July is now 52 million, and we had a cash flow very much corresponding to the results, i.e. most of them were cash costs. We have previously said that our runway would be at least through the first quarter 23. We now believe that we have had the possibility to lower some of our previously estimated costs, which means that we now estimate that we have a runway at least through the second quarter 2023, i.e. at least 6 months beyond the time when we expect to have the results from the PHSU05. So at least 6 months beyond that point. Yes, that's the short version of the finance part.
Thank you, Erik. So then just to summarize, Promore Pharma, we're a company, we're working with 2 projects that address significant medical needs. There are no pharmaceutical prescription products in this field or the respective fields. We are talking about markets that have a growth rate over the next 5 to 10 years of 6 to 10%, which is 2 to 3 times higher than what you see in the average pharma segment. We work with projects where we have validated technologies. We have patent families, several in each one of these projects. We have a runway that go far into the 2030s, and we have conducted clinical studies in each of these projects. We're far into the mid-stage development stage of these technologies. We have an extremely high safety product profile of these opportunities because these are locally administered APIs. which means that the likelihood that we would suffer from systemic adverse events in phase 3 is almost a risk that is almost completely retired. And we believe we have platform opportunities where there's additional medical utilizations that we can do of these two peptides. So in short, the main goal for 2022 is the execution of PHSU05, a phase 2 clinical study for prevention of dermal scarring. We are following on our operational plan, or actually we're a little bit ahead of it. We are following the budget. We have a cash runway that will bring us at least to Q2 of 2023. So we can say that we're in a very favorable position. We have no major deviations to report at this point in time. So with that, I would like to thank for me and turn the word back to Alf.
Thank you very much, Jonas and Erik, for that introduction. I have a very few questions here I would like to ask you, but I would also urge everybody in the audience, if you have a question, you can write them. There's a control named questions. It could be indicated with a talk bubble. If you enlarge that, you can write your questions. I will read them out and the company will answer. So feel free anytime you like. But just to start it off, you are preparing a phase 2 study with the ensereptide, and you said that the first enrollment of patients will start in Q1. What happens in the meantime? What are the remaining steps you can do before you start enrolling patients?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So we have the permissions from authorities to start. The remaining steps are the finalization of the investigational medical product. So we are working on the final steps of that right now so that the product can be released to the study center in the very beginning of the year. And then I should say we have a very nailed down specific schedule for the spring, even though it's not a very large number of patients, but each patient will have a number of visits that are on schedule, and these patients are not coming in one big group, so to speak. So it needs to be scheduled around the Swedish public holidays in the spring. So we have a schedule that we will be sticking to, and even though we got the approval from the authorities to start a little bit sooner than we anticipated, we have to stick to the enrollment schedule that we have, which calls for a start in the middle of Q1.
And as for the manufacturing of the test product, I assume that you're using a CRO or rather a CMO to produce that. Are there any remaining technical challenges in the manufacturing?
Yeah, I should say we have previously communicated that for actually a couple of years we have struggled with issues on robust manufacturing of the hyaluronic acid component, but that risk we completely retired when we went into a collaborative or a contractual arrangement with the Italian company Fidia this spring, and they have manufactured and delivered their product to us. So I would say at this point in time, there are no specific risks that we're looking at other than what are the standard usual risks. Of course, it could always be a hiccup in the last moment that an assay shows a deviation from the specification, but we're not looking at any specific risk event at this point in time that we feel would jeopardize this. So it's standard risks at this point in time.
Okay, thanks. And looking forward to the evaluation of the endpoints, and I'm thinking particularly of the efficacy. How will that be evaluated in the end? Is it by self-reporting by the patients, or is it the treating physician that's going to compare, I suppose, in a blinded state? Can you just tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So actually, we have a fairly large number of endpoints in this clinical study, simply for the reason that we want to get the broader in. Like we see this a little bit as a fishing campaign to understand which endpoints are optimal for this type of treatment modality in a future study. So among the endpoints we have rating scales such as the Vancouver scale, the POSAS scale. These are global visual inspection scales involving inspection of both the investigator and the patient, so both scores are weighed in. And then we have a fairly large number of histological assessments that we're doing on biopsies from these patients to look for surrogate markers that predictably can be used to assess the likelihood of developing irrevocable or unfavorable scarring on the skin.
Okay, I see. Right, and on to ropocamptide. You didn't mention it now in the presentation, but you mentioned in your report that you had the article about the previous study published in the publication Wound Repair and Regeneration. Can you tell us anything about what sort of intention you have got from that article?
Well, it's always a nice confirmation of the quality of a study when you get a publication accepted in a peer-reviewed journal, and this happens to be probably the leading journal in terms of clinical findings in wound care. So it's a quite prestigious journal where we got the results accepted. So that suggests that we fulfill all the quality requirements that the scientific community would like to see. It's also an opportunity to engage at the level of the scientific exchange when we have discussions with strategic partners, with their medical affairs department and their experts on clinical sciences.
See. And also about ropocamptide, you say you are in the process of developing that into a one product solution. Can you tell us a little bit about how is this process going, and who is performing it, and are there any particular costs involved in that particular step?
Yes. So we are performing this with the assistance of external CMOs, and we're working with the CMOs that we have utilized in the past for the manufacturing of the product. I should say it's two elements to this. One element is to assess and verify the stability of a single component product. Here we have provisional data that looks encouraging. So we have no reasons to, at this stage, believe that this would not work. At this point, we've captured relatively short stability data, but so far so good. The other part of it is to develop a robust and scalable manufacturing process for a single component product. And here we have just started this work, and we intend to have the conclusion on the stability and on the processability of this somewhere towards the end of the first quarter, beginning of the second quarter of next year. And with regard to the cost, this is in line with what we described in our prospectus when we had our share issue or rights issue in June of last year. So we're following that cost allocation, so to speak.
Okay, thanks. I'll just repeat to all the people in the audience that you can write your questions. As I said, there's a control called questions. You can write your questions there if you have any. I just have a couple more of my own. But the first question, I guess this is for you, Erik. I noted that in the cash flow analysis in your report, Q3 report, there is a negative 3.8 million listed under financing. I'm guessing this is a late payment of a transaction fee for the share issue that you did in Q2. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. We made the provisional booking of the new issue in the second quarter, but we did not make that the provision for the costs.
Okay.
So that is correct. That is correct. So it's a net in the third quarter that the accumulated. That is the sort of net value of that transaction.
Right. And that transaction fee, that's booked against cash, I suppose.
Yeah.
Okay.
Equity.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But it still has a cash effect in the quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Right. And my final question, I think, is about something you said towards the end, Erik, about the study costs starting to accumulate in the fourth quarter this year and first quarter next year. I think that's what you said.
Yes.
Have you said anything about the total cost for that you anticipate for the PSU 05 study as such?
No, we have not disclosed any numbers, but since this is a relatively small study, we're talking about relatively low costs anyway. We can actually conclude that it's rather going to be a bit cheaper than we anticipated previously, 1 or 2 million cheaper than we previously have taken into consideration. So that is also one of the reasons why we believe that we can prolong the runway. So I would say that we will get a lot of information for a relatively small amount of money with this study.
And do you expect the cost to be front loaded, so you take the bulk of the cost in the current and the next quarter, and less costs in the later stages?
Yes, partly because of the cost of the drug.
Okay. Right. I don't have any more questions for you today, and I can't say that we have received any from the audience. So with that, I think it's time to round this off. Thanks very much, Jonas, and thanks very much, Erik.
Thank you, Alf.
Thank you.
Terrific hosting. Nice to be here. I'm looking forward to meet you again at the end of next quarter.
Likewise. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Alf.